What do you feel like is the future for sports scientists? If you're talking to the next generation in terms of skill set, is coding still a fundamental?
Probably one of the foundations of sports science, working with the athlete. Ultimately, our job is to impact decision making. We're living in 2025. We're living in the age of AI, and absolutely sports science is becoming about big data, working with technology. And I think having that data science skill set and having the ability to work with big complex data sets is going to become more and more important in the sports science realm. So I get interns come through the club and work with me, and one of the first things I say to them is start learning how to code, start learning those data science skills, because whether you want to be a sports scientist or whether you want to be an S&C coach, I think being able to work with data and being able to do that really efficiently through programs like R or Python is really valuable. It's a really employable skill set.
You've been exposed to a range of different sports teams, like you mentioned earlier, around the world. If you were to start a footy club with unlimited sort of budget, what would be the most important for an AFL club, do you think?
We had a demo of the 1080 Sprint 2 a couple of weeks ago, and I'd love 10 of them. But I think, unfortunately, they're pretty expensive, and we've got a pretty tight soft cap here in the AFL, so we can't have everything. But yeah, unlimited resources. I'd love access to an array of technology, but I also probably wouldn't go overboard with different bits and pieces, because it goes back to my point before. There's already so much noise, and I think for me, what's really important is defining what your big rocks are. So what's really important to impact our playing group and to impact decision making, what's really important, and what's the technology that's going to help us collect that data that's going to inform decision making.
In terms of injury mitigation, what are some of your non-negotiables when working at a footy club and putting in processes in place around screening, load monitoring?
It's a renewed focus for us this year in particular, but from a lower limb soft tissue injury standpoint, I think one of the most important things we can do is expose our athletes to high speeds. For me, a big rock is making sure that our athletes are exposed to high velocities every single week. So looking at muscle architecture in terms of biceps femoris long head. So one of my PhD supervisors, Dr. Ryan Timmons, his PhD looked at that and the relationship that biceps femoris long head fascicle length has with the risk of prospective hamstring injury. And so we find assessing that, measuring our athletes' fascicle length is quite informative for us, not so much from an injury risk standpoint, but what it does tell us is how they're responding to the program that we have in place. So if there's guys that are shorter than we expect, what that tells us is that the exercises that we have in place might not be the best exercises for that individual.
Going back to AI, what do you feel is most exciting in this space in terms of where it's going to help?
AI is just absolutely improving my efficiency in terms of how I go about day to day. As an example, might have a conversation with a coach. They might want to see a new report or a new dashboard that's providing them with some really important information. And normally that would take someone a little while to knock up, and I'd spend a bit of time in R coding, building that. But now platforms like ChatGPT, you can basically just plug in a bit of a prompt, tell ChatGPT what you need, and it will give you a skeleton. It will give you a really good framework that you can then take and adapt. And having that framework, having that skeleton, rather than having to build it yourself from scratch, it might save me a couple of hours during the week. And those are hours that I can then invest back into spending time with the high performance manager, looking at data, uncovering those insights. So for me, that's been how I've slowly started integrating AI into my workflow.
Jesse Green's just sent in a question. As it relates to decision making, are you recording the instances where you intervene and why you intervene?
And we definitely are. So I guess an example is from a screening perspective. So all our screening data, our screening processes in terms of our groin squeeze, we do an isometric hamstring pull as well. So anytime an athlete flags and we intervene off the back of that, that's recorded in a fair amount of detail by the physios in their notes. So we have a system whereby the physios will enter notes whenever an athlete flags, and whenever they intervene off the back of that, they record that. All the steps that have been taken up to that point are very well documented. And we will always go back at the end of the season. We'll go back and review those instances. There's always some instances that are unsuccessful as well, and we review them. What could we have done better in that instance?